You pick the key, so I'll sing on your key rather than you play one key and I'll play another one. Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Astatara Satasri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Shri Radha Lila Madhava Ki Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Nitai Go Premanandi. This morning we heard about the Paribhasa Sutra of Sri Brahma Samhita. And now we're going to hear about, so it's describing the position of Krishna, and even more specifically Govinda, as the absolute supreme person with spiritual form, spiritual qualities, never coming into being as forms of this world come into being, and then that means would go out of being, because whatever comes into being goes out of being. Whatever is born, it also dies. That form of Krishna is eternal. We're now going to hear about the place of Krishna's pastimes, the abode of Krishna. So we can chant together. Sahasra patram kamalam gokulakyam mahatpadam tatkarnikaram taddhama tadanantangsha sambhavam. And I'll read the translation. Bhaktisiddhanta begins identifying the subject. The spiritual place of transcendental pastimes of Krishna is portrayed in the second verse. The super excellent station of Krishna, which is known as Gokula, has thousands of petals and a corolla like that of a lotus sprouted from a part of his infinitary aspect. We'll come back to infinitary aspect. It's ananta. Ananta means unlimited or infinite. So his infinitary aspect, ananta, who is an expansion, a plenary expansion of Balaram in Goloka. So Balaram, through his plenary expansion Ananta, manifests Gokula. Just like this question that Balaram Leela was asking about how to see the nomenclature of God as He, we're accustomed to thinking in mundane terms about He and She. Similarly, we're accustomed to thinking about time in mundane terms like past, present, and future, as if once upon a time there wasn't a Goloka. And Balaram looked at his watch and said, seems like it's time for Goloka. And then, voila, he manifested Goloka. Because we're used to thinking in mundane terms, past, present, and future. So this is where this word ontology comes in. It's not, that's a chronological understanding. But this is an ontological understanding. That is, Balaram is the basis and support of Gokula, and Krishna is the basis and support of everything, including Balaram and Gokula and everything. So please don't make the mistake of thinking of this as a time-bound function. It's not. And so many other things about the spiritual realm are not. So back to the translation. The super excellent station of station means abode. Go right ahead. Try again. The super excellent station. You like a train station, bus station, airport, you like a place. The abode Prabhupada would use, the abode of Krishna. The super excellent station of Krishna, which is known as Gokula, has thousands of petals and a corolla like that of a lotus, sprouted from a part of his infinitary aspect, the whirl of the leaves being the actual, ran off the page, being the actual what? Abode of the Lord. Abode of, here we go. Something's wrong with the projection, it's ran off the screen. Huh? Yeah, look. Look. Well, it's more than just the last. The abode of the... Where are we? This is verse 3. Verse 2. Okay. The whirl of the leaves being the actual abode of Krishna. I've got it. You can't see it, but I can, because it's on my page. So that's the translation. And especially for the benefit of the people who aren't here with us but are viewing this online, here is that diagram, or the poster that I've been referring to that's in the temple room here with us, but now it's on the screen. There's the the central part is the corolla, you see in the center, and up here is the thousands of petals. It's not depicting thousands, but there are thousands of petals. And the central part, or the corolla, is like that of a lotus. And the whole Gokula, or Goloka, is sprouted from the energy of Ananta, who is a part of Balaram, the infinitary aspect, the unlimited Balaram, unlimited in many ways, so we're going to hear about that. So, as with the morning, this will be a shorter class than the morning, but there will also be 5 parts, and I'll identify as I'm moving from one to the next. So the first part is the general characteristics of Krishna's abode. In the verse, it's describing it or naming it as Gokula. Gokula, commonly in our usage of the terms, Gokula refers to this realm on this earthly planet where Krishna made his appearance. Goloka, indicating the higher realm, or the eternal abode of Krishna in the Vaikuntha spiritual sky. So the first thing is, it's stated, it's shaped like a lotus. So as we see. Here's another picture, because it's mentioning in the verse specifically about the corolla. That's the corolla. During the morning class, those that are online couldn't see. There's the Kalpabriksha tree behind Radha and Krishna. There's filaments that are mentioned later in the verses that we'll be discussing. It doesn't show the petals, it's just focusing on the inner portion. And there's a mantra, hexagonal mantra, that's going to show up in text number 3. We're not going to discuss it this morning. Oh, this is supposed to be one by one, showing sequentially. It doesn't. This is supposed to go one by one. Shaped like a lotus first and not seeing all the other text. So you can't fix it now. You'll fix it later on. So, and further, in other slides, it's one by one sequential. I want them to not see the whole thing, because it'll be distracting. So pretend you don't see. I'll just remove it. Just remove it. Okay. Shaped like a lotus. These are characteristics of Krishna's abode. Another is that there's no taint of material influence. It's unlike this place, where there's not just a taint of material influence, it's matter that's being moved by spirit. It's simply material influence. We're influenced by the modes of nature and karma and time and so many material influences. But all of those are conspicuous by their absence in Goloka. This is now discussing things from the purport of Bhaktisiddhanta and following the commentary of Jiva Goswami. Goloka is entirely manifested of spiritual energy. So we know the personality of Godhead has unlimited potencies. Unlimited potencies. And of those unlimited potencies, there are three general categories: internal, external, and marginal. And there's subcategories of those three divisions. In the spiritual world, in Goloka, there's only one of those. The marginal living entities are there, but there's no external energy. It's absent. And it's manifested by specifically the will and the unlimited potencies of Lord Ananta. Lord Ananta is a svangsa, or a plenary expansion of Balaram. So I'll do that one again. There's Radha. It's not like a chronological thing. It's an ontological thing. There's Radha and Krishna. Krishna expands as Balaram. Balaram expands as Sankarshan in the Goloka realm. He also expands a svangsa, a plenary expansion as Lord Ananta, and the potencies, unlimited potencies and willing power of Lord Ananta manifests Goloka. In his Sandarbhas, Jiva Goswami gives references to support the statements just made. One of them comes from the second canto, Bhagavatam, where Shukadev Goswami is describing what you have heard in many places. The 3/4, 1/4. Spiritual world is 3/4, the material world is 1/4. There, of all of the unlimited energy. So what's 3/4 of something that's unlimited and 1/4 of something that's unlimited? It's to give us a perspective that this is small compared to the spiritual world. That's all. But it's consistently 3/4, 1/4. That comparison. The spiritual world would consist of the 3/4 of the Lord's energy is situated beyond this material world, and it is especially meant for those who will never be reborn. Then Padma Purana, another reference that Jiva Goswami makes in his Bhagavad Sandarbha. All these spiritual planets, this is one of them, are eternal, changeless, and free from the abominable material mode of passion. They are pure And they have a golden effulgence, bright as millions of suns. The expanse of the 3 quadrants, this is still a quote, Padma Purana. The expanse of the 3 quadrants is in the transcendental realm, whereas the single quadrant is in this world. The 3-quadrant manifestation of opulence is eternal, whereas the opulences of the single quadrant are temporary. Now, in his commentary on this verse, Bhaktisiddhanta, rather than making those direct references to Jiva Goswami, states it this way. There's the river Viraja. So if you look at that chart that's over on the left side, let's see, for those of you that are viewers, at the very bottom, there's one of the universes, that's the inside of which is shown Garbhodakshay Vishnu residing. And then all those golden globes, they're also universes. It's pictured up here as well, for those of you that are closer to here, you can see. And then above, or they're floating in the causal ocean, the river Viraja. And on the other side of the river Viraja, because the river has 2 sides, on the other side is the spiritual sky, the Paravyom. On this side of the causal ocean is the material energy. So Bhaktisiddhanta writes, the spiritual world is located beyond the realm of mundane nature, on the further shore of the Viraja river, surrounded by the halo of Brahman, of indistinguishable entity. Undifferentiated Brahman is on the other side, and on this side is the created realm. And the planets in that spiritual sky, he indicates, they're known as Vaikunthas, the largest of which is Goloka amongst the Vaikunthas. Just a comment again, because it was expressed to me already twice. Bhaktisiddhanta's language is difficult. And as I said yesterday, basically don't worry about it. Because the language isn't the essence is the essence, and the essence is Krishna. And details about Krishna are being explained in language that suits Bhaktisiddhanta. I'm trying to elucidate on the essence, and not so much necessarily unpack the language. So don't worry about the language. Try to capture the essence, and because the essence is purifying. That's our business here. Now, back to the verse. There's mention here of the infinitary aspect. It's from the last line. Tad ananta angsha sambhavam. So focus is now going to the ananta, or the infinitary aspect. So I'm going to spend some time discussing the infinitary aspect. This is a natural feature of Goloka. I'm going to read, if you have your Brahma Samhita, in the first paragraph of the purport to verse number 2. The third sentence in the purport of verse 2. The transcendental entity of Baladev has 2 aspects, namely, 1, the infinite spiritual manifestation, which is what we're looking at and discussing, and infinite accommodating space for insentient gross things. We're going to hear about this in the upcoming verses, in the process of creation. It's called Adara Shakti, or the accommodating chamber. I'm not going to explain it now, but please file in your memory bank that the accommodating chamber, or the capacity of matter to bring about creation, is part of what Baladev does, or Balaram does. Balaram likes to serve, more than likes to serve. It's his essence. Those of you that have read Chaitanya Charitamrita, on the section dealing with who is Lord Nityananda, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains who is Lord Nityananda by explaining Balaram, because Lord Nityananda and Balaram are the same, and he explains that from Balaram, the mood of service of all entities, and we're one of them, living souls are also entities, but the Purusha avatars and all other expansions of Krishna, they're also entities. Conscious entities like to serve, emanating from Balaram. So we hear from Prabhupada that Balaram and Krishna are the same, except one is white, that's Balaram, and Krishna is Sham. He's blackish like a monsoon cloud. But there's another distinction. Balaram is the servitor, and Krishna is the served. Krishna takes the position of receiving service. Balaram takes the position of offering service. There's three references that I'll quickly make that support the fact, the statement that's in the verse. Jiva Goswami gives them, where Balaram manifests the spiritual world. But Balaram doesn't just manifest the spiritual world, he manifests all kinds of things. But one is from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila chapter 5, verse 18. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami states, in relation to Balaram, is that he manifests the spiritual world, and Prabhupada comments that transcendental abode exists by the energy of Baladev, who is the original whole of Shesha or Ananta. The Tantras also confirm this description by stating, quote, this is Prabhupada, that the abode of Sri Anantadev, the plenary portion of Baladev, is called the kingdom of God. That's one. Jiva Goswami, in relation to Krishna Sandarbha, or in the context of Krishna Sandarbha, he is also describing, as Brahma Samhita does, to understand Krishna we need to understand his abode, and he states the same thing. The abode of Krishna is manifested by Baladev. He does this by his unlimited potency, which accommodates, and also he accommodates the material creation. That's what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says about Adara Shakti. Then Madhya Lila, chapter 20. This is Lord Chaitanya's instructions to Sanatana Goswami. That original Sankarshan, Balaram, is the cause of both the material and spiritual creations. He is the predominating deity of egotism, and by the will of Krishna and the power of the spiritual energy, he creates the spiritual world, which consists of the planet Goloka Vrindavan and the Vaikuntha planets. Although there is no question of creation, as far as the spiritual world is concerned, The spiritual world is nonetheless manifest by the supreme will of Sankarshan. The spiritual world is the abode of the pastimes of the eternal spiritual energy. Just confirming the same thing that's stated here in Brahma Samhita. A little bit more about this infinitary aspect, specifically the mood of service. Like, the living entities, we have a constitutional position. We all know what that is. Jiver Svarupai Krishnera Nichadas. That's our position. We're eternal servants of Krishna. From where do we derive that? From Balaram. Where does everything come from? It comes from Krishna. And the mood of service comes from Krishna's direct expansion, Lord Balaram. So, in the spiritual world, Balaram not only manifests the spiritual world, but he manifests all of Krishna's paraphernalia. His shoes, his bed, his umbrella, his chair, his house, even his Brahmin thread. There's a little Prabhupada story. In the early days of the Hare Krishna movement, Prabhupada, when he came, he didn't have mridangas. So he used whatever was available. And commonly what was available in the counterculture group was bongo drums. The first time I saw Prabhupada in Kirtan was with Allen Ginsberg. Prabhupada was playing kartals, and Allen Ginsberg was playing bongo drums. Because that was like what hippies did, we played bongo drums. And then one devotee went to India, and Prabhupada told him to get a mridanga. He described what a mridanga was. And then the devotee came back from India, and he arrived in Los Angeles, and he went straight away to Prabhupada's quarters and presented Prabhupada with the mridanga. And Prabhupada immediately paid his obeisances to the mridanga, took off his upper garment, and wrapped it around the mridanga, and said the mridanga is to be respected as Balaram. Because the mridanga is part of the paraphernalia of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, and Lord Nityananda manifests the paraphernalia of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. So, the fiberglass mridangas, they have a name, Balaram mridanga. Isn't it? So, we should respect mridangas, not just because they're clay and they can easily break, but because Balaram. Or like paraphernalia on the altar. It has a name, Chadiya. Because it's used in service to Lord Krishna, it becomes spiritualized fully, and it's respected, it's to be respected, like Balaram is to be respected, because he manifests, now specifically in Goloka Vrindavan, he manifests all of the paraphernalia of Krishna. And to go even further, because one might get confused by this, but anyway, the internal potency has three parts: Sandini, Samvit, and Ladini, or Satchitananda. And the Sandini potency of Lord Ananta manifests everything, including Krishna's form. It's not like once upon a time Krishna didn't exist and the Sandini potency said, hey, let's have a form of Krishna around here. It would make the place complete. And then voila, there was Krishna's form. It's the form of Krishna's made of the Sandini potency. And the whole, everything. This is Balaram. And then he expands as Sankarshan, who expands to the Vaikuntha realm, And Sankarshan expands as Mahasankarshan, who maintains that spiritual realm. And Mahasankarshan expands as the Purusha avatars, Mahavishnu, who in the mood of service to the desire of the personality of Godhead, he manifests the spiritual world. And he expands as Garbhodakshay Vishnu and Kshirodakshay Vishnu. These are all expansions of the infinitary aspect. There is no limit of Balaram's desire to serve. We sometimes hear of the rasas and how Balaram serves in all the rasas because he just wants to serve. There's no limit to his desire to serve. So he's Krishna's brother, so there's a relationship of friendship. But he does so in the mood of service. And because he's the older brother, he sometimes adopts the mood of protecting Krishna, who doesn't need protection. So it's Vatsalya, or parental type of affection, in the role of the elder brother. And he expands as an Angamanjari in the Madhurya Rasa. Very amazing infinitary aspect. So don't limit the infinite or the infinitary aspect, but appreciate how strong is the desire of Balaram to serve Krishna. It knows no limit. So that's on this infinitary aspect terminology. Now, in the purport, it's described that Goloka is the highest of all planets. This is another feature. We're on to number 3 of our 5-part thing. Here's the chart, and Goloka is the highest of all. Above, let's see. Here is Ayodhya. If those who have read Brihat Bhagavatamrita or parts of it, you'll know what I'm speaking about. Gopal goes from here, he goes to the topmost planet of Lord Brahma, he goes beyond the layers of the universe into the spiritual sky, he encounters the Vishnu Dutas, and then he goes to Vaikuntha, and he meets the Lord Narayana, hoping that he can meet Madan Gopal, the deity of his mantra. Later he goes to Ayodhya, and eventually he goes to Goloka Vrindavan. Goloka Vrindavan is the highest of all. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur states like that in the purport. In his Adi Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj states it like this. Sri Goloka, this is Adi Lila chapter 5, same chapter we've been speaking about. Sri Goloka, the highest of all, is also called Vraja, Gokula, Svetadweep, and Vrindavan. Like the transcendental body of Lord Krishna, Gokula is all-pervading, infinite, and supreme. It expands both above and below without any restrictions. So this is another aspect or feature of Goloka, because this verse is the place of Krishna's pastimes, the highest of all. Then we'll go back. Looking at this one here, we have to be careful not to apply material conceptions to Gokula. Gokula meaning the abode of Krishna, the place of Krishna's pastimes here. Because it appears in this world, we may think of it as in some way lesser than the spiritual world. Gokula may be lesser than Goloka because it's here instead of there. But it's non-different. Here's what Jiva Goswami says. Within a banyan seed is a banyan tree. At least the potency, the potential of a banyan tree is within the seed. So, if you have your Brahma Samhita, on the second page of the purport, halfway down of the second page, I'm going to read where Bhaktisiddhanta writes, starting with, Gokula is a spiritual plane. Hence, his condescended position in the region of material space, time, etc., is in no way restricted, but unlimitedly manifested with his full boundless propriety. But conditioned souls are apt to assert that a mundane conception in regard to Gokula by their miserable senses, so as to bring him below the level of their intellect. Though the eye of an observer is impeded by a cloud when gazing at the sun, and though the tiny cloud can never really cover the sun, still the clouded vision apparently observes the sun as covered by the cloud. In just the same way, the conditioned souls, with their obscured intelligence, senses, and decisions, accept Gokula as a piece of a measurable land. You've heard this before, the Prabhupada's statement saying you cannot enter Vrindavan just by buying a ticket. You've heard that one before? Well, certainly you can go to Vrindavan by buying a ticket. But where you go is not the Vrindavan that's being spoken of in this purport or in this verse or in these charts. It's a covering. Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes in Navadvip Mahatmya of just as oil placed on water makes a very thin film across the surface of the water, so that when you look at the water, you don't see water, you see oil. But just below the oil is the water. Similarly, the spiritual world, Gokula, in this realm, may be covered by this film of what we see when we go there. Noisy horns beeping and dirty things here and there and pigs and monkeys and, the external energy. We see that. In 1974, when Prabhupada first took devotees to see Vrindavan, they commented, Prabhupada, there's so dirty everywhere. And I don't know if you've taken any new people to Vrindavan, and that's one of the first things they see is the external things. The sanitation and, etc. The noise, the dirt, the dust. And so they said, Prabhupada, it's so dirty here. And Prabhupada said, you're not seeing Vrindavan. You're seeing only the external. Because there is the external, and beneath the external there's what is being spoken of here. And that which is being spoken of here is Gokula is not different than Goloka. The two examples that Prabhupada gives is a postal box compared to the post office, because the postal box is authorized by the postal department. If you place a letter in the postal box, it'll go to the destination you want. Someone will come and pick it up and goes to the post office and processes it. But it's not like any other box that you paint the same colors and call it a post box. Or an embassy, isn't it? And those of us that have American passports want to go to India or whatever country we want to go, we have to go to the consulate. And in the consulate, it's, let's say if you the Indian consulate, it's Indian law. If you break the law inside the Indian consulate, you're subject to Indian law enforcement. Not American law enforcement, even it may be in wherever the city is, New York or Chicago or wherever they have their Indian embassies. You're subject to Indian law. Or an ambassador, same thing. It's the representative of. So Goloka is in the spiritual world eternally, and Gokula is here eternally. When, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, when this place is destroyed at the time of cosmic annihilation, that remains, because it's not perishable. It's eternal. And then creation comes and it's there, maybe covered. But the transcendental realm is never perishable or limited. That's what's being spoken of in this verse. In his Vrindavan Dham Mahimamrita, those of you who went to Vrindavan or just happen to know, on the back side of the Kali Ghat is the Samadhi of Prabodhananda Saraswati. And Prabodhananda Saraswati was the uncle of Gopal Bhatta Goswami and the brother of Venkata Bhatta. So when Lord Chaitanya left Sri Rangam to continue on his South India tour, Gopal Bhatta had to wait something like 25 years before he was, his parents were in such a condition, they sent him to go to Vrindavan. But his uncle, Prabodhananda Saraswati, went to Vrindavan much sooner. Prabodhananda Saraswati was the guru, the initiate, the Diksha guru of Gopal Bhatta. But his place of residence in the later stages of his life was in Vrindavan. And he wrote wonderful, very beautiful descriptions of Vrindavan. Very, very beautiful poetry. I'm just going to read one part. What he sees, when he doesn't see the external part, but he sees the transcendental abode of Vrindavan. Pretty amazing. In Vrindavan, the leaves on the trees are made of emeralds. The flowers of diamonds. The new flower buds of beautiful pearls. The newly sprouting leaves of red Kuruvinda jewels. The many fruits, all filled with various kinds of nectarian tastes of rubies. The rain of an incessant shower of nectar, and the bumblebees of sapphires, etc. He's seeing a realm that we don't see. Well, here's one from when Janava is the consort of Lord Nityananda, when she was always by the side of Lord Nityananda, serving him. He departed this world, and so one of the things that she wanted to do was go to Vrindavan and see Vrindavan, because she had never been to Vrindavan. And when she went to Vrindavan, Radhakund had been recently excavated, as we see it today. But prior, it was just a rice paddy. But by transcendental arrangement, a businessman gave some money, and Raghunath Das Goswami invited him to construct a kund, so he did. So Janava sat by the side of the kund and chanted japa. And there's a special place, Janava Baitak, protruding a little bit into the Radhakund. They made it just for her. And when she came inside, she described what she saw. And what she saw was a bridge going across Radhakund, and on the bridge were Radha and Krishna and many gopis performing pastimes. So, have any of you, when you've been to Radhakund, seen a bridge across Radhakund? And Radha and Krishna enjoying on that bridge together? We don't see that. But Janava could see that. And there's many other things that we can't see that a transcendentalist can see. And that's what's being described here, is the transcendental abode, not the oil layer covering. So we have to be careful not to apply material designations to Gokula. In fact, Gokula has all of the potencies that Krishna has. The Dham is none different than Krishna. And as Krishna has inconceivable potencies, the Dham also has inconceivable potencies. Jiva Goswami mentions some of them in his commentary on this verse. One of them that he mentions is part of Gokula. It's mentioned in the upcoming parts of Gokula, as you see on the screen here. The white portion around the lotus. So the white portion is Sweta Dweep. That's where Mathura and Dwarka are. So in the descriptions of Srimad Bhagavatam, it gives the diameter of Dwarka city to be 12 yojanas. And 1 yojana is 8 miles, so 8 times 12 is 96. That's 96 miles in diameter. And inside that which is 96 miles in diameter has thousands of palaces. Each one of the palaces are being mentioned as being 2 kroshas, or 4 miles. So the math doesn't make it difficult. 4 miles times thousands is way beyond 96 miles in diameter. There's inconceivable potencies. It's not, the compiler of the Bhagavatam, Vyasadeva, wasn't inept in math. He's giving the factual description of Achincha Shakti. Now here's another one that Jiva Goswami gives. Govardhan Hill. When Govardhan was lifted, there was a area underneath Govardhan Hill under which all of the 900,000 cows of Nanda Maharaj and all the household paraphernalia and all the residents of Braja fit underneath. The math doesn't work. It's not possible. But there's a Achincha Shakti at work. It is sometimes said that Govardhan, feeling the touch of Krishna's little finger of his left hand at the bottom of Govardhan Hill, Govardhan expanded. But it's inconceivable potency. Or, here's one that Jiva Goswami mentions in his commentary. When Narada Muni, one time wishing to go visit Krishna in Dwarka, when he went to visit Krishna in Dwarka, he went to the different palaces, and there's a lot of palaces, 16,000 palaces. And when he went to see Krishna, he was astonished that simultaneously Krishna was manifest in each of the palaces, 16,000 simultaneous Krishnas, and that at the same time of the day, Krishna was doing different activities as if it was different times of the day. In some places, he went and it was evening. Some places, it was the middle of the day. Some places, it was the morning. But it was the same time of the day. So time and space move according to Krishna's will for his pastimes, is Jiva Goswami's point. Mentioned in Krishna book, in relation to Dwarka, is King Ugrasena had bodyguards. And the number of his bodyguards, that's part of this 96 square miles, 96, not square, diameter city. He had 10 quadrillion personal bodyguards. That's a lot of zeros. Now somebody said, I didn't hear this directly from Sariputta, but it sounds reasonable. He did the math because he was a mathematician, PhD. So if you have people standing in a line, a normal line, you can figure how many people it takes to make a mile. And he did the 10 quadrillion, it is something like around the circumference of the earth about 4 times. 10 quadrillion. But that's just bodyguards, that's not everybody else. So one could say, oh, it's fiction. And one can say, it's the inconceivable potency of the spiritual world. One that I'm sure a number of you have heard is that in Vrindavan, the distance between one place and another place and how Krishna traveled. So the devotees asked Prabhupada that question. Krishna covered all this territory because, to go from, let's say the Kaliya Leela. From Nandagram, Krishna and the cowherd boys, Balaram stayed home that day. They went to the side of the river Jamuna where Kaliya Ghat is. Now if you got in a Tata Sumo, not a bus, but a fast car, to go between Keshi Ghat and Nandagram, how much time would it take you? About an hour and a half to 2 hours. That's, without traffic. Krishna went to the Kaliya Ghat, and messenger went back to get Nanda Maharaj and Mother Jasoda, informed them of Krishna's in difficulty. They came, and all this took place within the course of a day, plus all that time that they were standing by the side of the river Jamuna, or the lake, in great anxiety about Krishna's safety. So, like that, they traveled from one place to another place so quickly. The devotees asked Prabhupada, how was this possible? And Prabhupada gave the answer that the lotus that you see pictured here, sometimes the petals of the lotus would close, making distance between point A and B less. And sometimes the lotus would expand, making the distance between point A and B greater. So, Krishna can move his inconceivable potencies however he likes to fulfill whatever purpose he likes because they're his potencies. And they move according to his desire. In fact, the whole of Goloka and the whole of the spiritual world is simply a manifestation of a place of his pastimes. So we should not make the mistake that's really easy to do if we carry a material conception, to think of this region as something that is worthy of having material conceptions imposed on it. It's a mistake that we shouldn't make. And last point is Goloka and Gokula, they're non-different. Here's what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes. If you have your book, it's at the bottom, it's in the second paragraph, towards the beginning of that second paragraph. He refers first to Sanatana Goswami's Brihat Bhagavatamrita, saying it's conclusive, and it should be accepted that way. Quote, he, Krishna, displays his pastimes here, in this land, as he used to do in Goloka. Gokula, Goloka being the same. The difference between the two planes lies only in their locations, as high and low. That is, in other words, Krishna plays exactly the same part in Goloka as exhibits on the mundane plane of Gokula. There is practically no difference between Gokula and Goloka, save that this which exists in the shape of Goloka in the upper region is the same as Gokula on the mundane plane, where Krishna showed his various activity there. Then Jiva Goswami has included the same in Bhagavad Sandarbha, to ascertain the plane of Goloka. Vrindavan is the eternal abode of Krishna, and Goloka and Vrindavan are identically one. And though both are identical, yet Krishna's inconceivable energy has made Goloka the acme of the spiritual kingdom, and Gokula of Mathura province forming a part of the mundane plane, which is also a manifestation of the tri-quadrangular vibhuti, meaning the spiritual world. So they're the same. And while they're the same, there's variegatedness. So this is the last part of our presentation this morning. There's variety. So while they're the same, there are four essential differences. One of them is one that is emphasized by Bhaktisiddhanta in his writing. So in Goloka, what you see pictured in the image here, Goloka, there's no demons. Whereas in Gokula, there's demons. But in Goloka, by the arrangements of the Yogamaya potency there's a semblance of demons. I don't know exactly where Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj gets his reference, but he made some reference because I heard his lectures on this topic. He said, sometimes, he gave two examples. Sometimes there's rumors. Aristasura is coming. He's a terrible bull demon. Look out, Krishna! And some person that nobody knows comes running into the scene saying Aristasura is coming. So everyone gets panic-stricken looking for Aristasura. And then there's no Aristasura because there's no demons in Vrindavan, Goloka. And then the mysterious person just disappears. So I don't know where he gets that reference. But then there's another one where he says there's like huge signs, like a billboard. And it shows a picture of Aghasura. Like the Aghasura demon, look out. And people see the big sign that says Aghasura demon. And they become very fearful. And then suddenly the big sign, the billboard disappears. Meaning, the illusory, the Yogamaya potency acts in such a way that the purpose of increasing one's intensity absorption in Krishna is facilitated. That's the purpose of the demons. But in Gokula, there's demons. They're sent by Kamsa and so on. In Goloka, there's no demons. So that's one difference. Another difference is, in Goloka, there's no birth pastime. In Gokula, the very important birth pastime, Krishna appears. And the third difference is, in Goloka, there's no marriages of the gopis. In Gokula, there's marriages of gopis, which is important in our Gaudiya teaching, the Parakiya Bhav message. In Goloka, that's absent. But most important, according to Bhaktisiddhanta and a little bit of common sense, is in Gokula, unqualified people even can see Krishna's pastimes when they're manifest. In Goloka, there's no unqualified people, and so there's no seeing by unqualified people of Krishna's pastimes. But Goloka, the emphasis here is, Goloka is very merciful. And anyone who has been to Vrindavan, even the pastimes of Krishna may not be visible. There's a mystery and a magic of Vrindavan that, because it is a transcendental place, it inspires attraction for Krishna. Just being there has that potency. So very, very merciful, even to unqualified people like ourselves. So much so that we read that little passage where in the 14th chapter Brahma is praying to take birth in Vrindavan, even if it's a blade of grass. And if he's not eligible for that, then just outside of Vrindavan, where residents of Vrindavan may go and step on his head to deposit some of their dust from their feet. And Uddhava similarly prayed like that. So how exalted is Gokula, the place of Krishna's pastimes within this world. And one last thing. There's a place in Vrindavan where twice Krishna showed both to Akrura, and then actually earlier Krishna showed to Nanda Maharaj and the elders of Vrindavan the spiritual Goloka in Gokula. We're very familiar with Akrura taking Krishna to Mathura, Krishna and Balaram getting out of the chariot to take their bath before entering Mathura. You know the pastime. They get back on the chariot. Akrura requests permission that he may also take his bath. And when he goes to take his bath, he sees Krishna and Balaram in the river Jamuna. He's very bewildered, so he goes back to see Krishna and Balaram were in the chariot, and they're still in the chariot. But he saw them in the river, so he goes back to the river and he sees the spiritual world. Anantashesh acting as the resting place of Lord Vishnu, and Lord Vishnu reclining, surrounded by the personified Vedas and various devas and exalted personalities praising. So he saw the Vaikuntha realm there in Goloka, or Gokula. But earlier, this is after the pastime of Nanda Maharaj being arrested by the is it? No. Is it after the Govardhan Leela or after the arresting of Varuna? In any case, I can't recall. Nanda Maharaj, in both cases, there's a speculation going on. Who is this boy? Because Nanda Maharaj saw Krishna being worshipped by Varuna, and of course in the Govardhan Leela, everyone saw Krishna acting in a super excellent, beyond ordinary human capacity. So the speculation, who is this Krishna? And then their speculation went in the direction of, will we be able to see the spiritual world? If Krishna is God, or manifestation of God, or representative of God, or something, are we going to be eligible to see the spiritual world? So Krishna, understanding their hearts, he decided to show them the spiritual world. So he took them to the same place, Akuragat, and in the Bhagavatam is referred to as Brahma Hrida, Hrada. Here's what it says, chapter 28 of Canto 10. The unlimited extension of spiritual light, called the Brahmajyoti, in text 15, this is Prabhupada's commentary, or Acharya's commentary, is compared to a lake called Brahma Hrada. Lord Krishna submerged the cowherd men in that lake, in the sense that he submerged them in the awareness of the impersonal Brahman. But then, as indicated by the word Udrita, he lifted them up to a higher understanding, that of the personality of Godhead in his own planet. As clearly stated here, Dradrashur Brahmano Lokam, they saw, just as Akrura did, the transcendental abode of the Absolute Truth. Quote, Nanda Maharaj and the other cowherd men felt the greatest happiness when they saw the transcendental abode. They were especially amazed to see Krishna himself there, surrounded by the personified Vedas, who were offering him prayers. They saw Goloka while in Gokula, is the point. And specifically noticeable was the absence of themselves. They saw Krishna, but they didn't see themselves because they didn't know themselves to be residents of the spiritual world. They considered themselves to be cowherd men and cowherd women and people of this world, although they're not. They're of the spiritual world, and they were there to take part in Krishna's pastimes, and they do that eternally. I'm just going to read a series of verses, and we're done, from Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the very last section, where Gopakumar, we'll go to this slide, where Gopakumar goes all the way to the Goloka realm, and he then has this capacity to move back and forth between Goloka and Gokula by dint of his mantra. So here's what Gopakumar is speaking to one Brahmana. It is the nature of Goloka that they who live there never wish to leave it, even if they cannot have Krishna's company there. Torment felt there dances again and again on the heads of all happinesses. Grief felt there is better than the greatest bliss. Staying there always, attaining an eternal result beyond what I could desire, and my heart always feeling fulfilled, I never became satiated. With my senses and limbs, I cannot, even for a moment, leave Krishna's lotus feet, which are anointed with kumkum. In this very poor person's, the Lord's mercy has placed faith in his sweetness. What by others cannot be spoken, I have somehow said. Staying for a long time in Goloka, I came to see that it was the same as the beautiful Mathura Mandala in the material world. Mathura Mandala is filled also with the same gopas, gopis, birds, worms, hills, rivers, trees, and everything else. It is eternally decorated with the same pastimes of Sriman Krishna Chandra. Sometimes I stay there, and sometimes here. Now I do not see a difference between them. Only when coming from one and going to the other may I see a slight difference. Attached to both places, I do not know any difference between them. Neither my eyes, ears, nor mind touch any place other than these two abodes. My heart does not think. Lord Krishna also stays in other places, and his devotees also stay in other places. When sometimes I see the residents of Vaikuntha or other places, I see them as being tormented by separation from Sri Krishna. Sometimes I see that their love is not like the love of the people Braja feel. From that I feel distress, love, and then the highest happiness. I offer my respectful obeisances to the people of Goloka, who eternally see the glories of that abode, and who are worshipped by the residents of all the worlds. How can I describe them in words? So that's a beginning of a description of the place of Krishna's pastimes, who's the cause of all causes and the source of everything that exists. And we'll continue this evening with the next verse, text 3. So any comments or questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Previously, when no, my understanding or whatever I gathered previously was that the four Purusha avatars, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarshan.
They're not Purusha avatars. There's three Purusha avatars: Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, Kshirodakshay Vishnu. Those are the Purusha avatars, 3 in number. There's 4 Chaturvyuhas. Go ahead now.
Yeah, I thought that their function was to manifest the material world, but here it seems different. Like
the Purusha avatars manifest the material world, and the Purusha avatars are expansions of Mahasankarshan of Vaikuntha. They, the Chaturvyuha, assist the Lord in His pastimes both in Vaikuntha and in Goloka, specifically in their features of Mathura and Dwarka in Goloka, because Mathura and Dwarka are part of the region of Goloka. They assist the Lord in His pastimes. They are manifestations of the Lord, these Vasudeva, but they're also manifestations of the Lord to assist Lord Vasudeva in His pastimes. That's what they do.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Okay. Okay.
Maharaj, there is a question online.
Okay.
Yeah, this question is from Arvind Prabhu. He asks, how can we make sure that when we go to Vrindavan by buying a ticket that we beg for mercy and we will be at least allowed to perceive the original Goloka and Gokula on the spiritual world?
Well, that requires qualification. It's not just buying a ticket and not just offering prayers. That's a good beginning, buy a ticket and offer prayers. But the qualification is purity and very strong desire. And when the Lord decides to disclose Himself, He will. And if the Lord doesn't disclose Himself, He won't. So He's looking for a guarantee. There's no guarantee, except it's in Krishna's hand. Yes.
Yes, so there is no marriage of gopis in Goloka. So the Parakiya Bhav is considered the highest rasa here. So is it not the same there? Because I thought Parakiya Bhav would be when there is gopis are married to somebody else.
There's the sense of, but there's no marriages. Whereas in Gokula there's marriages and there's children from those marriages.
Right.
As there's no demons, there's no marriages. But there's the sense of, but there's no marriages. It's mysterious.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
So, Maharaj, you said that, so Balaram, so he's from him the paraphernalia comes, the Lord's paraphernalia. So, I'm feeling it, it's very hard for me to conceive that before even Balaram, but the paraphernalia doesn't exist, the Lord's paraphernalia. And how is that only after the Balaram's expansion that paraphernalia has been created? So how it's becoming difficult to understand.
Okay. Well, I'll repeat something I said earlier. Don't make the mistake of thinking in terms of material time. Because in terms of material time, what you said, it wouldn't work. But this is not material time. It's not once upon a time, and then some time passed, and then there was some paraphernalia. So don't think in that kind of time, past, present, future time. So it's not a chronological description, it's an ontological description. It's not, don't think in terms of chronology. You're saying simultaneously, and I'm saying eternal. And there's a difference between simultaneously and eternal. Simultaneously fits in with past, present, and future. And eternal doesn't have anything to do with past, present, and future. Past, present, and future are absent. So the description of Balaram manifesting the paraphernalia, etc., is an ontological description. It's a relationship. From Balaram comes. You know, it's like Balaram being an expansion of Krishna. It's not like once upon a time Krishna was alone and was feeling lonely and thought, gee, I'd like to have a companion. And then Balaram manifested. That's a chronological kind of picture of things, which is an error due to our defective condition. But rather, a transcendental perspective is eternally Balaram is manifest as Krishna's expansion. And eternally, Balaram manifests paraphernalia and the spiritual world, etc. There are time-bound things, which is like, you know, the Purusha avatars. They manifest the material world for some time and then withdraw it.
Maharaj, one more question.
Yeah.
So, if the spiritual world is permanent, that means there is no need to manage it. But whereas the material world is like it manifests and unmanifests, so there is work to be done here. But then the spiritual world, it is just created and it is existing. There is nothing. So what?
Again, don't think in terms of time. Eternal is eternal. But in that eternal realm, there's service, which is eternal. Doesn't have a beginning and end. It's eternal. Krishna has pastimes. Balaram has pastimes. And they're eternal. We describe them in language which is the same language we use to describe things that are within time. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that's the limitation of language. But try to make the adjustment of service that's eternal, that's not time-bound. And then, yes, there's maintenance. There's service. But not because it's something that's created and that needs to be maintained because it was created. It's eternal service.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, there is a question, two questions online.
Okay.
First one is from Sri Babu Prabhu. He asks, can the residents of Gokula enter Goloka by getting enough qualification? He also says he's not sure if it's a right question.
He's right. What's the other question?
Next question is from Anand Vadvani Prabhu. He asks, even though we know that Krishna's pastimes are inconceivable and we should just hear, how do we practice such that our material mind doesn't bother us?
You tolerate it and purify it and elevate it in sequence. When the mind becomes attached to Krishna, it won't bother you. As this nice little quote from Gopakumar says, the distress is dancing on the heads of the greatest of happinesses. Contradictions are resolved in the realm of the Absolute. You have a question? Okay. He's going to give you the microphone. Here's the microphone.
So you said that the pastimes of Krishna are like unlimited, but then...
Pastimes of Krishna are unlimited, yes.
So then, but does that mean like he has infinite pastimes, or does that mean each pastime lasts forever?
Yeah, it's not only lasts forever, it is forever. It has no beginning, it has no end. Now, let me ask you a question. You know what the infinity sign looks like? Where's the beginning and where's the end?
There is none.
It doesn't have a beginning, it doesn't have an end. And that's just an infinity sign. So now, another question. Can you think of time that knows no beginning and knows no end? The answer is no. The mind can't stretch itself far enough to encompass that which has no beginning and end. It's beyond the mind, so don't try. But there are pastimes that have no beginning and have no end, and that's Krishna's pastimes. Everything of this world has a beginning and end. And everything of the spiritual world has no beginning and no end. Sometimes Krishna manifests those pastimes here. And after manifesting those pastimes here, he goes to another place and those pastimes are eternally going on. His earthly pastimes are eternally going on in some universe. And his spiritual pastimes in Goloka, they're eternally going on in Goloka. And there's no beginning and end. So my advice to you is don't try to imagine timelessness, because it's like an elastic band. At some point it's going to break. You can't, you stretch it far and further and further and it's going to snap. So don't do that. Just hear it, that it's timeless pastimes, and try to appreciate it's beyond our conception. It's timeless pastimes. And they're eternally going on. No beginning and no end. Now here's one little detail. Jiva Goswami says, although there's no past, present, and future, there is a sense of chronology by the internal potency, but not like we know. And so what is that? We don't know, because it's of the internal potency. But there's a sense. Let me give you an example. You know in Bhagavad Gita that Krishna says there's a place, the spiritual world, where there's no need of sunlight, moonlight, electricity. You know the verse? There's a verse, Krishna says. When this place is destroyed, that place continues to exist because it's not temporary, not created. And in that realm, everything is self-luminous. Now here's some sunlight coming in the window. And when the sun goes down, these lights are going to make light because there's electricity. Or the moon, which is a reflection of the sunlight, gives light. But there's no need of sunlight, moonlight, or electricity. Okay? At the same time, there's a moon. In the spiritual world, in Krishna's pastimes, there's a moon. There's day and night, setting of the sun and the rising of the sun, although there's no need of sunlight, moonlight, or electricity. And not only there's a moon, but every night is a full moon. Because here there's phases of the moon, right? Like today's Ekadasi. This is a fantastic way to spend Ekadasi, exactly what we should be doing, increasing our hearing and chanting about Krishna. But in the spiritual world, every day is a full moon. Or every night is a full moon, but there's no need of moonlight. It's just pastimes. So Krishna moves his energy for his pastimes. And it's his internal potency, which means it's fully conscious. It doesn't have a beginning and end. It's just pastime. You know, children like to play. And they wish they could play endlessly. But Krishna plays endlessly. So go to Krishna Loka and you can play forever. Without end. No beginning either. That's pretty inconceivable, isn't it? It's a nice place. Someone else? Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, in one of the slide, I saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu also Navadvip Dham. So is it that those pastimes also simultaneously happening in Gokula?
We're going to get there.
Okay.
Verse 5.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yes. The answer is yes. Okay. We're done. Oh, here's one.
Maharaj, what is the meaning of ontological? Ontological, what is the meaning of?
Look it up in the dictionary. It's maybe one way to say is the science of being. To understand what is ontology. Kind of, it includes relationships, but it's existence. What truly exists. That's what ontology is. The study of what truly is. So the reference here is the paraphernalia of Krishna, the abode of Krishna, the forms of all the residents of the spiritual world. Ontologically, they are manifestations of the infinitary aspect of Krishna, Lord Anantadev. That's what is. That's the ontology of it. And Krishna is the basis and support of Anantadev. So ultimately Krishna is the source. But he is giving some service to Balaram because he likes service. He really likes service. And we'd be wise if we did too. Service to Krishna. Okay, thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Just a quick announcement. We'll resume third session in evening. This evening, 7:30 in a temple. And also there is a lunch prasadam. Wonderful feast is being prepared. So there is arti at noon. And then there will be a prasadam served downstairs. Nice, wonderful Ekadashi prasadam. Please honor and go. Thank you. Hari Bol.
Stop the... No.